Barack Obama's back like a nasty itch, and this time he's making the case for voting laws that create a permanent advantage for the Democratic Party. I'll expose once again our national con man. The Supreme Court, a big win for us on vaccine mandates. With one tiny exception, I'll explain the rationale for the court's decision and dissect it further. Attorney Joseph McBride, who represents a January 6th defendant, is going to join me to lay out the evidence for what happened in the Capitol Hill tunnel on January 6th. And I'll continue my exploration of Russian literature, introducing a concept called the Fool in Christ. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
When Biden went to Georgia and gave this divisive, hateful, mean-spirited, even Democrats were like, he went a little too far, speech on voting rights, where he began to compare his critics, and I think he's referring here even to Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. They're segregationists. They're in the George Wallace tradition. I was thinking to myself, this speech has all the fingerprints of Obama. Where's Obama? Did Obama kind of write this speech or inspire it, or whether it's the Obama gang that concocted it? And then sure enough, like a nasty itch, Obama is right back in the news, echoing Biden. Now, he's doing it in his normal Obama way. Remember, Obama's way is mean-spiritedness drives the whole thing, but it has a certain rhetorical camouflage, and you can almost visually see it in Obama. He always strikes the same. I now find it somewhat comic, but it has a certain, it's like, And he looks to the left, he looks to the right, and he kind of sticks his nose up in the air as if he's about to say something profound. Now, what he says is inevitably banal, but nevertheless, this is the recognizable Obama style. It has all the signature Obama phrases. The world and future generations will be watching. First of all, the world doesn't watch anything. Second of all, future generations aren't alive. They're not going to be watching. But this is just that kind of grandiose rhetoric. And Obama, of course, again, a lot of these phrases. Our democracy isn't a given. Well, it was given to us by the founder. It isn't a given. It isn't self-executing. We have to work at it. And then, of course, he gets to the main point. He goes, essentially, his point is to attack the voter integrity laws. That's what he's after. And he goes, state legislators have passed a variety of laws, quote, now here's it, designed to make voting harder. Well, this is like saying there are all kinds of laws designed to make driving harder, designed to make banking harder, designed to make flying harder. No, not designed to make banking harder. They're designed to make banking more honest. They're not trying to make flying harder. They're trying to make flying safer. So this is the actual rationale, which Obama doesn't really bother to address. It was an attack on everything John Lewis fought for. Now, John Lewis was actually an admirable civil rights activist from the 60s, but over time, the guy became corrupted like so much else in the Democratic Party. He basically became the kind of racketeer that we've come to expect, playing the race card, racial politics all the way, climbing the affirmative action hill. So he lost his heroism a long time ago. Obama attacks the filibuster. He goes, we can't allow it to be used to block efforts to protect our democracy. I also love this kind of royal we. We can't allow. We must do this. We must do that. Who's we? So automatically there's an attempt to appropriate, as if all of America speaks with one voice, and if there are any Americans who fall outside of that, well, they're obviously outside the mainstream. We don't have to listen to. In fact, they become the enemy. Obama concludes, legislation that ensures the right to vote and make sure every vote is counted. And there we go. Every vote is counted. Again, you have to unmask this rhetoric. With Obama, you always have to pay careful attention because there's always a con that's going down and you have to catch it. It's kind of like watching a magician. You have to go, wait a second. This is how you're pulling this off. And so make sure every vote is counted has no reference here to make sure that the people who are voting are supposed to be voting, that they're eligible voters, that they are legitimate voters. We make sure every vote is counted. It's kind of like, make sure every traveler who shows up at the airport can get on the plane. Make sure everybody who shows up at the bank can withdraw money. Never mind if they're who they say they are. Never mind if it's actually their bank account. Make sure that everyone can do banking. So this is the fraudulence of Obama. Now, what exposes this guy as a total hypocrite is that when he first ran for office in 1996, he was able to disqualify all his primary opponents. You know how? By challenging their petition signatures. By showing that these petition signatures were not valid, he was able to match them up against signatures and say, listen, disqualify this guy, disqualify that guy. And so you had people sometimes on very technical grounds. In some cases, people printed their name instead of writing it out. In some cases, a female voter got married and she had registered to vote under her maiden name, but now she signed a married name. Boom, out goes the signature. There's no match. So what Obama did is not only was he able to disqualify his opponents, but Alice Palmer, who was the incumbent state senator, herself failed to qualify. So Obama essentially won the election, won in quotation marks, by removing all his primary opponents, and he did it exactly by challenging the authenticity of voter signatures and petition signatures. So here's a guy he knows full well that this is a tool that he could use in order to prevail. So he's for it when it benefits him, and he's against it when it seems to work against him. This is the quintessential con man, Barack Hussein Obama. It's 2022, and it's time to get new towels. Now, if you go out and buy towels, you got to be a little careful. Ordinary towels don't dry you very well anymore. They feel soft and lotiony in the store. You take them home, they don't absorb. Why not? Because towel companies typically import the product and they add softeners that make towels feel good, but they don't do their job. They don't dry you very well. Now, Mike Lindell, CEO of MyPillow, has solved this problem. He founded the best towel company right here in the USA. They have proprietary technology to create towels that feel soft and also actually work. They're made with USA cotton. They come with the MyPillow 60-day money-back guarantee. And for a limited time, Mike is offering a good deal on a 6-piece towel set. It includes 2 bath towels, 2 hand towels, 2 washcloths, all made with USA cotton, soft yet absorbent. Normally $109.99, but now $39.99. A really good deal. Call 800-876-0227. That's 800-876-0227. Or go to mypillow.com. Make sure to use promo code DINESH Dinesh. Some interesting news out of Texas. Beto O'Rourke, the skateboard man, the cool cat who almost upset Ted Cruz for the Senate race in Texas, is now running for governor against Governor Abbott. And he's down 8 points in the polls. And we're trying to explore what's going on in Texas. Now, here's an interesting story. Texas Democrat named Ryan Gillen, who's from the south part of Texas. Debbie understands that part of the country better than I do. But in any event, he has defected to the Republican Party. And so, honey, listen to this. He goes... First of all, he says, many of us are waking up to the fact that the values of those in Washington, D.C. are not our values. So he's talking here about the Biden administration. And then he gives 3 reasons. He goes, the ideology of defunding the police, that's number 1, of destroying the oil and gas industry, number 2, and the chaos at our border is disastrous for those of us who live here in South Texas. Now, this guy won his seat by nearly 17 points in the last election. So he's in a very safe seat. You would think he could stay a Democrat. He's probably just disgusted at what has happened to the Democratic Party.
First of all, I just want to say congratulations, and I'm so glad you finally woke up. I wish others would join you. As I've told you before, the Democrats have had a stronghold in South Texas. I grew up there after coming from Venezuela. My mother is from the Rio Grande Valley. And so my grandparents, they were born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley, and they were also Democrat. And it was a really tough thing to change their mind about the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. And I tried with Ronald Reagan when he went down there. Try to tell my grandma.
You were 14.
I was 14 years old the first time that Ronald Reagan won the election, and I tried very, very hard to no avail to change her mind. But basically, it makes me really upset that the Democrats use Latinos, blacks, other races to make them, they're like slaves. And I basically told my grandparents, listen, because the thing was that they believed that the Republicans were for the rich and the Democrats were for the poor. But I told my grandmother the Democrats were for the poor. They wanted you poor. That's the whole point of the Democratic Party. They want that power. They want to be elitists. And they want those that are in the lower socioeconomic level to stay there.
I mean, it's like the old serfdom. You trade a meager subsistence for allegiance.
Right. It was not about a hand up. It was a hand out. And I hope you're happy and you keep voting for us and keep coming back. Because that's all you're going to get. You're just going to get a handout.
Well, the Democratic Party has gone from, Mr. Smith goes to Washington to the hills have eyes. I mean, these guys have become monstrous. They've become like mutants.
Oh, yes.
Just think back to the party of the 70s and 80s. I mean, when I listen to Christian Cinema talk, I'm listening to the old Democratic Party.
Yes.
But when I listen to Biden talk, this scowling man who came out of the old Democratic Party but is apparently metamorphosed.
But I think aliens may have gotten to his brain. But one other thing. So I'm really happy that Democrat Ryan Gillen changed over. I would like to make a plea that more do so. And one in particular is Senator Lucio from Brownsville. And we're family friends. He was best friends with my uncle Noel, and he knows very well the connection there. But I would really like to make a plea for him to do the same thing. He's pro-life, pro-family. There's no reason in the world why he should be a Democrat.
Well, let's address his reason for staying a Democrat. He thinks that the Democrats are the party of the welfare state. And I think it's important to convey that Republicans aren't against helping people. The main difference is that Republicans are for the government playing a role in which the government is enabling you to become independent, enabling you to climb up the ladder. And that's the difference.
Hand out instead of hand up. That way you get to make your own decision on how you want to spend your money and perhaps even do better for yourself.
Let's turn to another story. This is actually out of Florida. A family is fighting. They're in appellate court to try to administer ivermectin to their family member. And this old guy, Daniel Pisano, 70 years old. He's
not old. That would make us old.
Honey, he's on a ventilator at Jacksonville Hospital. He's been on a ventilator 22 days. They say he has a low chance of survival. But an outside doctor, kind of the family doctor, says, you know what, we can save him.
Yes.
And moreover, this guy says, the doctor says, I've given ivermectin to a lot of my patients and they're doing better.
Mm-hmm.
So what possible... Now, the Mayo Clinic, which is basically treating the guy, says, we're not going to give him ivermectin. Because it's not, I guess they consider it not an approved treatment.
It's not the protocol for treating COVID.
Right.
Yes.
Now, they might consider it to be some sort of experimental drug, but it's important to note that there are about 90 peer-reviewed studies on ivermectin. The drug's efficacy is not really in question, and it is approved by the FDA. This is not like ivermectin.
For some uses, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, but for to that point, nothing, and I mean nothing, is proven for this virus,
it's
right?
A novel.
Everything is novel for this virus. So the fact is, everything's experimental. Every medication, everything's experimental, right? So, and it has helped people. And I have to say, on a personal note, my mom, who got COVID, is on ivermectin, and she's doing very, very well. She didn't have to go to the hospital or anything. So, again, I think that this is ridiculous that we are in a point in this country where some people are begging to try other methods, because think about it. If the patient is already dying or very close to dying, then why not try something that could save him? Because if you don't try anything at all, he probably will not live anyway. So it's not like you're giving a very healthy person this medication, right?
I mean, my concern is that the resistance here is political. In other words, that it's not a purely medical decision, but rather it's sort of like, listen, ivermectin, is sort of seen as part of the kind of alternative treatments, and therefore they have this kind of wall of skepticism toward it. Because you're right, rationally, someone has terminal cancer and they want to try this, they want to try that. You're going to say, sure, go try it, because after all, you're already under a death sentence.
And with cancer, there's a lot of experimental drugs with cancer, and people do it all the time because they want that chance, right? Well, people want that chance with COVID, and really, it makes you wonder. Is the virus the bottom line, or is money?
Well, that's another good point. Well, I hope the appellate court grants this guy and, well, his family their wish, and that this guy has a chance to try. For a long time, it seemed like aches and pains are something, well, you just have to live with. There's nothing you can do about them. But it turns out there is something you can do about them. There's a drug-free solution, and it's called Relief Factor. You know something about this?
Yes, absolutely. I was told that I have a lot of inflammation in my shoulder, which is what causes what we call frozen shoulder. And I started taking Relief Factor, and it really worked. I was able to lift my arm. See, I can do it now. Able to lift my arm, move it around. And when I stopped taking it, it started hurting again. So I know that it's fighting something. It's got to be, right? Because I tried it twice. I went off and on of it, and sure enough.
I mean, you're not alone. We've seen all these testimonies of people saying exactly the same thing. They rely on it to deliver the goods. It just works.
It works.
And so whatever the magic formula is, it delivers, you can try it for yourself. And what's great about it, guys, is it's a really, it's 1995. So, or it's a quick start. It's a trial. See if it works for you, and you'll see it does. Go to relieffactor.com or call 833-690-7246 to find out more about this offer. That number again, 833-690-7246, or go to relieffactor.com. You'll feel the difference. In a big win for our side, the Supreme Court has come through and struck down the Biden vaccine mandate. The vote was 6-3, with the 6 conservatives voting to strike down the mandate, the 3 progressives reliably and predictably voting to sustain the mandate. And that was really the big news. Now, there was a kind of smaller corollary, and this had to do with whether or not the federal government could impose the vaccine mandate on healthcare facilities that receive federal funding. And here the court broke 5-4 the other way and essentially said that you can do that. And it was the federal connection that was critical. The federal money goes to these centers, and so they fall, in a sense, under the coverage of the federal government. The point is that it's one thing for the federal government to impose mandates on itself, on the agencies of the government itself. It's a whole other matter to impose them across 84 million workers in the entire private sector. These are workers, any worker who works for a company with 100 employees or more. Now, the decision to sustain the mandate for the federal healthcare facilities was 5-4, and 2 of the moderate to conservative justices, namely Roberts and Kavanaugh, went with the 3 progressives. That's how they got the 5. And the other 4 held firm and basically said, no, even in the case of a federal facility, you cannot have a mandate. Or to put it differently, you can have a mandate if Congress passes a law that imposes the mandate. But you cannot have a mandate with the executive branch unilaterally deciding that it wants a mandate. In other words, this is an important enough issue that it requires a law. It cannot just be handled as a matter of regulation. Now, let's turn to the main decision, which had to do with the mandate itself. Here you have a decisive repudiation. Really what the majority decision of the court is saying is, look, OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. This is a regulatory agency, and its job is to regulate what? Occupational safety. This is not a medical agency. It is not either equipped to, nor was it set up to deal with global pandemics. It's not supposed to deal with anything outside the workplace. So it's one thing to say, the court says, look, it's one thing to regulate occupational safety and health considerations. If you need to put asbestos in the buildings or you need to restrict pollution in the workplace, but you can't be restricting pollution in somebody's home. You can't be installing asbestos in somebody's garage. Why? Because that has nothing to do with occupational safety. In other words, OSHA has a specific mission, a specific charter, and that charter was granted by Congress 50 years ago. And says the court, quote, OSHA has never before imposed such a mandate. And although Congress has passed all kinds of laws dealing with COVID, including all kinds of COVID benefits and this and that, they go, Congress could have passed a law saying that there should be a mandate across the private sector, but Congress didn't do that. So OSHA's mandate, the court concludes, quote, exceeds its statutory authority and is thereby unlawful. The court goes on to make all kinds of distinctions. They say, listen, first of all, with any kind of rule, it has to be narrowly tailored to the people who suffer most vulnerable under that rule. And the court draws a comparison between, say, a lifeguard and, say, a meat packer. So a lifeguard is outdoors, and a meat packer is working shoulder to shoulder with other meat packers. Now, if OSHA had said, listen, in the meat packing plants, it's much more important to have that the people in there be vaccinated, but with lifeguards, they're working outdoors. I mean, Debbie was like, well, wait a minute, what if a lifeguard has COVID and he has to deliver, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation? I'm saying, Debbie, if someone's drowning, they're not going to be like, lifeguard, show me your vaccine passport. Are you vaccinated? If not, let me drown. I don't really want to get COVID. Come on. So I think the court's general point here remains valid. Now, one very important aspect of this is, and Justice Gorsuch in a concurring decision hammered this point home. He goes, listen, America needs to be governed by the people through their elected representatives. What we don't want is this regulatory takeover of our lives in which unelected bureaucrats are making laws, in effect, for all of us, and they're accountable really to no one. They're certainly not accountable to the people. Now, the left is kind of screaming about this. Here's actually a law professor, Kimberly Whale. Kimberly Whale says, if Congress is hindered in its ability to employ agencies to fill in the details of its broad mandates, life in the United States could change dramatically. Agencies make rules and regulations affecting stock markets, consumer product safety, the use and trafficking of firearms, environmental protection, workplace discrimination, agriculture, aviation, radio and television communications, financial institutions, federal elections, natural gas and electricity, the construction and maintenance of highways, on and on, even the licensing and inspection of nuclear power plants. And you know what? What she's saying is that regulatory agencies run America. And I guess what Gorsuch is saying is exactly, this has got to stop. It's one thing to have delegated authority to do specific things, and with that there is no issue. But when regulatory agencies take it upon themselves saying things like, I think we need to shut down the nuclear power plants. I don't think we need to take over the banking sector. Why is it the case that people show up for work in shorts? Why is it that we have Saturday and Sunday off? Why can't it be Thursday and Sunday to give people a break in the middle of the week? The point here is that these regulatory agencies, by the way, staffed by and large Democratic activists. These are people who have a lifelong allegiance to government. They're kind of these people who I think in an older society would be kind of the kind of professional village scolds. You gotta do it this way, you gotta do it that way. These people are now in the government, they're in the regulatory agencies. Reducing their power, I think, is very important. And when Republicans come into office, demoralizing these people, really humiliating them, disgracing them, kind of discouraging them from even being in government, trying to push them out so they go into private sector jobs, this should be part of the mission of the Republican Party. Ever since I was a kid, and it's probably your experience too, honey, I mean, our parents always were like, eat your fruits, eat your veggies, that's what you need to keep you healthy. And, we did, but only sort of. Because it was always like, how do we eat enough? We don't really like the taste. And so, we don't do the healthy thing. And now there's another way to do it, and it's a better way.
Fruits and vegetables.
Wow.
3 capsules of vegetables, 3 of fruits, and we're set. These are our fruits and veggies every day. So
I mean, the cool thing is they're easy to take. Boom.
Love them.
They smell good.
They smell great. They smell like vegetables and like fruit. I like the fruit better, right? Because I like the taste of fruit. I mean, the smell of fruit. But they're great.
Now, what's this?
This is called Fiber and Spice. Keeps me regular, but I discovered that it also helps with my acid reflux. Now, I don't even know if Balance of Nature even says that, but for me, it really works. When I take it, I don't get acid reflux.
And I have a little of that too. So Debbie's got me taking it. We both like it. So hey, look, try it for yourself. Call 800-246-8751. That's 800-246-8751. Or go to balanceofnature.com. Now, to get the discount, you got to use discount code AMERICA. Guys, I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast Attorney Joseph McBride. He's founder of the McBride Law Firm based in New York City. And Joe's a great guy. He's actually been he does represent 5 criminal defendants associated with January 6th and also a civil defendant. So he has been enmeshed in this situation. Joe, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. Let me start by asking you about the kind of big news from yesterday, the indictment of Stuart Rhodes, the kind of head of the Oath Keepers, and the Justice Department has accused him and apparently some others of sedition. So I think this isn't the first attempt, it seems, to justify the rhetoric of insurrection. These were apparently seditionists trying to overthrow the government. What is your assessment of this charge and the likelihood of being able to make this case against Rhodes and the other Oath Keepers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dinesh, and thank you so much for having me on. So with regard to Stuart Rhodes and that indictment, look, the narrative's talking point of insurrection hasn't worked for the left. So they are transitioning to sedition, and they're charging sedition so they can call them seditionists going forward. It's unfortunate. It's obvious. It's a weak move. I think it's a move out of desperation, and it's definitely wrong. Regarding whether or not the charge will stick, look, it's a tough charge to stick in and of itself. It feels like a repackaging of other charges in this case, the obstructing of governmental proceeding, so on and so forth. They're just repackaging it and dressing it up for the 2022 election season. I don't think that it's a good charge. I do think that they will be able to beat that charge. However, when you look at the depth and the detail of the indictment and of the conspiracy language in the indictment, it is troubling. Those defendants in those cases are going to have to beat a lot of charges. Conspiracy is tough to beat, so I do have concern and pause with regard to the rest of the indictment.
Now, let's turn to your client or clients. I know that one of the individuals you represent is Victoria White. Let's just take her as a representative case. What did Victoria White do on January 6th, and what is she charged with?
Victoria White came to the Capitol to peacefully protest. She first went to the Ellipse and then to the Capitol rally because there were a bunch of different rallies scheduled there that day. She pushed up toward the close to the building with the crowd. And when I mean push, she was pushed. There was moving and shaking back and forth. She wasn't violent. She entered into the tunnel entranceway thinking that it was going up to another level. She had never been to the Capitol before, and she was absolutely pulverized by the Metropolitan Police in there. One guy in a white shirt, the commanding officer in that group, hit her upwards of 40 times. Other people joined in. It's egregious and it's wrong. She's been charged with multiple crimes, including the felony of violently entering the Capitol. It's a ridiculous charge. She's never entered the Capitol. She was forced into that tunnel. She was beaten while she's there. We feel great about beating her case at trial, and we do feel great about winning the civil suit as well, because the evidence is all right there.
So, Joe, remember I was in touch with you a few days ago because PolitiFact was doing a fact check on me where I made the statement that the police had used massive force against unarmed protesters in the tunnel. It seems that Victoria White is a clear case where that was the case, right? She was unarmed. The police did use force against her. Now, is there video evidence to support that? I say this because PolitiFact rated my statement, which I thought was just a clinically accurate description of what happened. I had seen some video myself as false with their so-called comical truth-o-meter. So talk a little bit about what you know and what you've seen and what there's also testimony from people who were observers who were on the scene. What happened in the tunnel, and was it a fact that unarmed Trump supporters like Victoria White were beaten?
It is an unequivocal fact that unarmed Trump supporters like Victoria White were beaten. She was beaten viciously. She was unarmed. She was not violent. Right next to her, Roseanne Boylan was trampled. She was maced. She was beaten, and she was killed by the police. This is an incontrovertible fact. These facts will continue to come out with time. But this Victoria White's beating is widely available all over the internet. I have made it available on my Rumble channel. Your statement about those incidents is bullseye accurate. I will add that PolitiFact, they did reach out to me to fact check you. I gave them more than ample information to justify everything you said and then some. And then by some mystical act of God, they still failed you. That is a sham. It's wrong. They did it to smear you. You were right. And I call into question the veracity of that truth-o-meter, so to speak.
Let's take a pause. And when we come back, Joe, I want to pick this theme up and talk about some of the things you said in the letter and then generalize from that to a broader lesson about January 6th. We'll be right back. When you're online, did you ever read the fine print that appears when you start browsing in so-called incognito mode? It says your activity might still be visible to your employer, your school, or your internet service provider. So how can they even call it incognito? To really stop people from seeing the sites you visit, you need to do what I do and use ExpressVPN. Think about all the times you've used Wi-Fi at a coffee shop, a hotel. Without ExpressVPN, every site you visit could be logged by the admin of that network. And that's still true even when you're in incognito mode. What's more, your home internet provider can also see and record your browsing data. And in the US, they're legally allowed to sell that data to advertisers. You need an app that's going to encrypt all of your network data and reroute it through a network of secure servers so that your private online activity stays just that, private. ExpressVPN works on all your devices. It's super easy to use. The app literally has one button. You tap it to connect, and your browsing activity is secure from prying eyes. Stop letting strangers invade your online privacy. Protect yourself at expressvpn.com/Dinesh. Use my link, expressvpn.com/Dinesh. You'll get 3 extra months free. That's expressvpn.com/Dinesh. I'm back with Attorney Joseph McBride. He's the founder of the McBride Law Firm. He represents 5 criminal defendants in the January 6th case. Joe, we were talking about your letter to the PolitiFact fact checker. I thought you made a very subtle point where you said that even some of the guys who are charged with fighting back against the police or striking out at the police, some of those guys were rushing to the defense of unarmed protesters who were being beaten. So these are veterans, these are cops. Talk a little bit about these guys and why they did what they did. And now, of course, they're facing horrific charges because of it.
Look, 50 Stop the Steal protests over 2020, the previous year. 50, they were all peaceful. The protests at the Ellipse, peaceful. You get down to the Capitol and something has gone amok. Something is wrong. One of the things that has gone amok is the fact that the Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police Department are actively suppressing protesters. And the way that they're doing it is by brutality. There's macing, there's kicking, there's punching, there's brute force on older men, on smaller women, on younger women. They're being brutalized. You have veterans, you have Back the Blue crowd, you have pro-police, ex-police, your UPS man, your lawyer, your doctor. None of these people have criminal records. They're seeing this type of brutality for the first time in their life, and they are compelled to act. So they come to the aid of their countrymen and countrywomen. And because of that, they've been labeled domestic terrorists and insurrectionists when it's nothing of the sort. They stepped in to defend a third person or a person who they reasonably believed was in danger. The law allows them to do that. Be that as it may, they're being treated as terrorists, and it's absolutely disgusting.
Why do you think that there are judges, and this includes some Reagan judges, some Bush judges, some Trump judges, who have been, it seems to me, quite merciless against these defendants when the context of their actions is made clear? I mean, look how much sympathy is extended to violent criminals on the other side. Oh, this guy did that, but, even with the Waukesha massacre, the left was saying, at least initially, oh, he was fleeing another scene. He wasn't really trying to massacre anybody. He was just trying to get away. So you have this kind of elastic sympathy, but in this case, it seems circumstances are being ignored, circumstances are being put aside. Why is that?
Well, if you are a member of the political left, whether you are up in the upper echelons of the political party or you are a member of the militarized Antifa wing who enforces their politics in the street, you get a pass. But if you represent freedom-loving, red-blooded Americanism, capitalism, the American way, traditional values, and if, God forbid, you support President Donald J. Trump, they are going to suppress you, they are going to beat you, they are going to throw you in jail because the message is clear. They fear Donald Trump, they fear his politics, they fear his policies, they fear his America First sort of way of life, and anybody who follows him. People who follow Donald Trump, people who are part of the Make America Great Again crowd, are a threat to the change that they are trying to force upon us. And because of that, they are suppressing us in a way that we have never seen before in the history of this country.
So you're saying that there is an institutional establishment, which might even include some Republican nominees, who nevertheless view the kind of broader MAGA movement as a threat. And that's why even people who have Republican pedigree are in some cases coming out against these guys.
Well, without question, I would submit that your middle-of-the-road American person has more in common, if they're a Republican, with your Bernie Sanders Democrat than they do with Mitch McConnell. And Mitch McConnell has more in common with Nancy Pelosi than he has with you or with me. That is for certain.
Wow. Fascinating. Thank you, Joseph McBride. Thank you for joining me. I'd like to have you back as these cases move forward. And I hope some of them do move forward, because it seems to me in a trial is where you can actually get the full exhibition of the facts, not necessarily through a plea deal. But thank you for joining me, and I look forward to having you come back.
Great to be here, Dinesh. Thank you so much.
We all have homeowners insurance, and it's for a good reason. Without it, a fire, a flood, a burglary could destroy us financially. But there's another major crime your homeowner's policy doesn't cover. It's called home title fraud. The FBI calls title fraud one of the fastest growing crimes, and it can ruin you financially, which is why you need Home Title Lock. Now, title fraud happens when a criminal forges your signature on documents stating you sold your home to him. Then he takes out loans against your home and leaves you with the payments. He'll spend a fortune in legal fees trying to prove you didn't commit fraud. Home Title Lock puts a barrier around your home's title. That's why Debbie and I bought it, to protect our home. Now, the instant Home Title Lock detects someone from a cyber thief, a renter, or even a relative trying to forge their way onto your home's title, they help shut it down. Go to HometitleLock.com, register your address to see if you're already a victim. If you enter promo code RADIO, you'll get a 60-day money-back guarantee. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code RADIO. The actor and comedian Steve Harvey is only the latest voice to make a public protest against political correctness, against cancel culture, against sort of woke tyranny. Basically, Steve Harvey says he's not going to be doing touring anymore. He's not going to go on tour, and for a simple reason. He says, if I go on tour, we're living in an era where you cannot make jokes. I'm quoting him now. We're in the cancel culture now. Think of it. We're in the cancel culture now. The cancel culture has taken over. He goes, nobody can say anything he wants to. Chris Rock can't. Kevin Hart can't. Cedric the Entertainer can't. D.L. Hughley can't. I can go down the list. He goes, the only person that can say what they want to say on stage is Dave Chappelle. So Steve Harvey now says, listen, he has a scripted comedy show that is called Judge Steve Harvey. Well, it's not scripted. He's going to kind of do what Judge Judy does. He's kind of going to bring this kind of commonsensical style to bear upon conflicts. But Steve Harvey's like, that show itself would be in jeopardy if I tried to do stand-up. So he's out of there. And think of how bad this is for America. I mean, Debbie and I were, along with Danielle, my daughter, and husband Brandon, we were watching Johnny Carson. In fact, I was watching the old interview going back, I think, to 1972, when Johnny was interviewing Bobby Fischer, who had just won the world chess title. And Fischer's a difficult guy to interview because he's awkward. Sometimes he doesn't say anything. He just kind of gurgles. But I just was marveling at the way that Carson handled him. And Carson was just the quintessential comedian, wonderful not only in the delivery of the monologue, but just fantastic spontaneously. And I thought back to all the comedians of that era. And, not all of them are my cup of tea, but nevertheless, there was quite a variety. Remember Steve Martin, remember Don Rickles, Joan Rivers, George Carlin, Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, Chris Rock. And I'm thinking to myself, how many of those guys could even survive in today's environment? I don't think Richard Pryor could. George Carlin, forget it. Don Rickles would be out of there. So we now have these, I would call them fake comedians. They're unfunny, and they make these sort of sarcasm is the best they can achieve, and it's always sarcasm in the service of woke tyranny. So there's a kind of almost oppressive unfunniness to it. I'm thinking of such frauds as Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, the other Jimmy Fallon. I mean, I don't know which one is worse. John Oliver, who's basically superciliousness substitutes for comedy. Trevor Noah, who's basically a walking playing of the race card. So this is what we've got now. I mean, it's just comedy has just fallen through the cracks. And it's almost like we now have the ugly stepchildren of the original comedians. I think the message here is that if you want to relax again, if you want to laugh again, we're just going to have to get rid of political correctness, get rid of cancel culture, shut down woke tyranny. Mike Lindell donated 10,000 pillows to the families devastated by the tornadoes in Kentucky. I mean, think about it. This guy's being canceled right and left. He took a huge hit last year, but he's still doing this stuff. So how can he afford to do it? Well, he couldn't do it without you and me. We're his loyal customers. We need to support Mike Lindell. Go to mypillow.com, browse through all his products, not just the pillows. He's got over 150 products. Remember to use promo code Dinesh. You'll save on everything. Call 1-800-876-0227 or go to mypillow.com. If you use promo code Dinesh, you can take advantage of Mike's special offers on the towels, on the pillows, on the robes, and many more products. That number again, 800-876-0227 or go to mypillow.com. Make sure to use promo code Dinesh. I want to continue my discussion of Russian literature, and here I'm still in the extended introduction to Russian literature. And I want to introduce a concept in Russian literature called the Fool in Christ. The Fool in Christ. Now, this is in Russian the Yurodivny. And it's very interesting because I see this character appear in various forms in Tolstoy, in Turgenev, most notably in Dostoevsky. And I've never seen anything like it anywhere else. There's nothing of this character in, as far as I can tell, the rest of European literature, not even in world literature, with which I'm reasonably familiar. But there this character is in Dostoevsky. We see it in one of Dostoevsky's novels is called The Idiot. Well, who's the idiot? He's not a real idiot. He's not a madman. He is a Yurodivny. He's a fool in Christ. He's, in a sense, an impractical man who cannot be understood by the world. He's uttering a kind of strange, almost gibberish, but he represents an innocence. In this case, I'm talking about Prince Mishkin, the main character. But we see this character in Dostoevsky's The Possessed. We see it in Alyosha and the Brothers Karamazov. And I want to trace... curious about where does this kind of strange individual come from? Now, a little word about Russian Christianity. We have to remember that Russian Christianity is Eastern Christianity. And what I mean is that the Roman Empire, when we think of the Roman Empire, we're normally thinking about the Western Roman Empire, which collapsed around the year 500, really in the 400s, by invasions by the barbarians. But the Eastern Roman Empire, based in Constantinople, lasted till 1453, when Constantinople was overthrown by the Turks and became Istanbul, became really a Muslim city. And that brought the Byzantine Empire to an end. Now, Russian Christianity, the Russian Orthodox Church, draws on this Byzantine strain. And in the Byzantine strain of Christianity, there are two types of saint. There is the active saint. This is the man of the world or the woman of the world. These are people who are in society doing good things. And there is also another kind of saint. They're sometimes called the kenotic saints. Kenotic here from the word meaning emptying. Christ is said to have emptied or humbled himself when he became a man. And the kenotic saints are the saints in the monastery. These are people who by and large believe, listen, the world is corrupt. The world is defined by blood and sin. And the way to be a saint is to subtract yourself from the world and try to, through a monastic penitence and contemplation, gain a sort of direct access to God. There's a very interesting story about a guy subsequently sainted, a guy called Isaac. And Isaac was a rich man, powerful man, but he came under a sort of inspiration, a kind of afflatus or epiphany, and he decided, you know what, I'm going to give away all my possessions. I'm going to enter a monastery as a monk. And he did so. But when he did this, the evil one, or in Russia, the evil ones, the devils. Dostoevsky, by the way, has a novel called The Devils. It's normally put out as The Possessed, but it's the devils. The devils decide, let's go get this guy. We want to get Isaac. And so the devils, who are very cunning, appear at the monastery disguised as Jesus and the angels. And they tell this man, hey, come, give us your heart, give us your hospitality, give us your soul. And the man is taken in. He obviously wants to be closer to Jesus. He wants to be closer to the angels. So he gives them his heart, and they grab it, and they grab him, and they take him down to a kind of nasty underworld. And then here you have the Russian imagination come into play. Basically what happens is the devils turn the man into a horse. This was a common tactic by the devils. They would turn men into horses and then attach them to chariots. And the devils would ride in the chariots with whips, and they would whip Isaac, and Isaac would have to run as fast as he could, and the devils would be laughing and howling and chatting with each other. So this is a kind of almost unforgettable image which makes its way through Russian literature out of this story of Isaac, which is a very old story. Well, anyway, the way the story goes is that this Isaac escapes. He comes back to earth, so to speak. He has gotten away from the devils, but he's a different man. He's, in fact, unrecognizable. He's transformed. He's instructed in the ways of the devil. And when people see him, he talks a kind of nonsense. He speaks a little gibberish. He says strange things that seem out of context. And it's not because, again, he's not an idiot. He's not crazy. He's almost bringing in, you may say, the spirit of another world. This is the origin of the idea of the Eurodivne, the fool in Christ. Yes, he's a fool, but he's a fool from the point of view of the world. It's because he's embraced a different standard. And interestingly, these Eurodivne could be seen on the Russian street in the 19th century, even in the early 20th century. They were often dressed very poorly. They were sometimes shivering from the cold, and people would give them food. They would be like wandering beggars. And people left them alone and respected them, even the Tsar, because the Eurodivne have been known to go up to the Tsar and say, free this man, or you are a corrupt Tsar. And then the soldiers would immediately jump to attention. They'd go after the Eurodivne, but the Tsar would say, leave him alone. He's a Eurodivne. He's a holy man. Don't touch him. So what you have here is this idea, as I say, of the fool in Christ, and what the significance of this figure is to call into question all the standards of the world. It's also to introduce the reality of evil, the reality of devils, And Dostoevsky, as others, is very conscious not just of the devil outside, but the devil inside of us, the devil that you have to struggle with in order to overcome good and evil. The line between good and evil here, not running between the good guys and the bad guys, not even running between heaven and earth, but running right through the human heart and the human soul.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.